Live after that. Let me roll audio. Okay, we're rolling. All right, everybody, how you doing? I am Paul Swearingen, Pastor Paul on TikTok, the nonpartisan evangelical, and talking with Roggio today, the director and producer of 1946, the movie. And we just recorded a podcast that we'll release publicly here in a couple of weeks. On the NPE podcast about the making of the movie 1946, the movie, which hopefully will be coming out sometimes toward the end of the year. And we'll keep you updated on that and talk a little bit about how you can be a part of helping to fund that process. But I wanted for our private group and for those of you in the Patreon community to have a chance to meet Rocky a little more intimately, as we like to do with our private community. And Rocky, you talked in our podcast a little bit about sort of an awakening you had that as you found out you were same-sex attracted, it sounds like that meant you felt like you had to give up your faith until you met somebody who said, no, you can be gay and be a Christian too. Talk about that process in your life of kind of having to leave the faith and then finding out you really didn't have to leave the faith because of same-sex attraction.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't run away when you hear all of the things that you hear in the church? And then, as we mentioned in the podcast, after my parents found out, they read my diary actually to find out that I had been dating a woman because they had their suspicions. And that led to them writing me a 10-page letter on why I'm going to hell, with using Bible passages. And so it doesn't feel very loving. It's always legalistic. My dad's very dogmatic. And so why would I want to be a part of that? It's abusive, honestly. And I always felt that there was something off with it. And listen, my dad's a great man. He's a great pastor. He really is. He really loves the Lord. He believes in what he's doing. He's a benevolent man. He helps the community. I just feel that our oppressors are victims of bad theology, just as we are. But I never understood that, of course. I was, 16, 17, 18 years old. And so once I received that letter, I was just like, bye, I'm out of here.
Were you ever able, I'm sorry to interrupt the story, but were you ever, a letter is, gosh, I just hate that it's a letter, but did you, and we talked about in the podcast that your dad's in the movie. So you guys are working on relationship, even in disagreement over this theological point. But did you ever talk to him about the letter and say, hey, that didn't feel very good? And as he acknowledged that was probably painful for you?
Yeah, we tried to talk about it a little bit at the Reformation Project. So in 2009, we took my dad to the Reformation Project where he officially agreed to participate, signed a release form, sat down and did an interview. And prior to us meeting in Seattle, I asked him if he had a copy of the letter and he brought it with him.
Oh my goodness.
So I read it while I was in Seattle to revisit it because it had been, 20 years. And then we sat down and kind of talked about it. It's probably one of the most awkward interviews that you'll see in the movie. We're just like, it would be nice to have another follow-up with him now that it's been another full year and we've both grown in this full year, to see where he's at now, if he's maybe more side B, if he's still side X, but yeah, it's hard. It's hard to have those conversations, as you can imagine. So we try to just talk about the weather and the birds that he likes on his front porch.
So you were telling me you met someone and she sort of led you back to the church and back to your faith.
Well, yeah, I mean, she led me to go to church. So which then led me to learn about gay Christians. And I would identify as being a gay Christian, but would still not challenge, well, of course, homosexuality is a sin and that's just what they think. And, just go on with it. I couldn't do that. We're no longer together, and that's totally fine. But it led me to really asking these questions and discovering for myself that it's okay, and discovering for myself the gay Christians that actually are like, no, we need to look at this because we know who we are. So why are we going to let an institution continue to marginalize a group of people that God created? So it's been wonderful that I've been able to own through just my drive of self-identity, of knowing who I am, and not being afraid to challenge the institution, not being afraid to challenge authority, which is one of my blessings and a curse. When I was 2 years old, the deacon of my dad's church pulled my mother aside and was like, "You're going to have trouble with this one."
Oh, no.
But always was like asking questions, it just like, you can't just come up to somebody and be like, "This is truth because," no, let's talk about this.
So am I wrong? Did you leave the faith, or did you just leave the church?
I left the faith and the church at that point, and now I'm back in both. So yeah, which I never thought I would ever step into a church again, or let alone be doing anything that I'm doing now, like this kind of work, and I know the Bible better than I ever have. I read it as a kid, but I revisited it a couple years ago, got through the whole thing, and now obviously I've studied it and have to, and I do a lot of sermons too, just to look at both sides. I have a list right now of non-affirming pastors, about 20 on the list, and I'm going to watch a sermon from every single one the next couple of weeks and make sure I have lots of tequila by my side. No, I'm just kidding. But it's important to listen to see what's really going on, because I feel there's a cancer going on within our church buildings that seeps out into our society, and it's not doing any good, and it definitely isn't serving a gospel message. I think that we're getting it backwards. The church is becoming the Pharisee of the days, So, but yeah, I never thought I would ever be back in the faith, let alone doing faith work.
And just to clarify on that, I use that terminology a lot, that the evangelical church has become Pharisaical, and I know that's hard language for people, but the Pharisees, their belief system was, there's a set of rules and you follow those rules or you won't have eternal life.
Yeah.
And is that not the evangelical belief, that, okay, there's a rule, you can be gay, but you can't act on it.
Right.
And is that not in line with a Pharisaical belief, that that your behavior determines your standing right or wrong with God? And so, yeah, I think it's tough for people to hear the idea of evangelicalism paralleling with Pharisaical beliefs, or the beliefs of the Pharisees.
But
they do.
What's going on?
Yes, they do. What was that moment like when you felt like, I can be gay, and I mean, if gay is the right word, can I have same-sex attraction, be in a love relationship, and still be in right relationship with God, be a Christian in essence?
It was very exciting because, again, from my own story and knowing that I could have been a victim of alcohol poisoning, I could have crashed my car, I had a huge cocaine addiction. I was a disaster during some of those years. And so, knowing that I can come out of all of that and actually have a space in the world that doesn't look at me as a great abomination, it led me to hope. And so once I learned of this research, because of my past experience, I felt it would have been irresponsible of me not to tell this story. If I can turn my pain into change, I'm going to do it. So it's really encouraging.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it always, I've loved working in this idea and starting to see where the theology of the Bible lines up with it. And for those of you who are listening now, we just recorded a podcast, Rocky and I did, where we talk about the verses, particularly of the New Testament, the passages of Romans 1 and 1 Corinthians 6 and 1 Timothy 1 that are used to buoy this idea that homosexuality is hated by God. Not just like, hey,
Right.
You'll fix that, but an abomination is the word I keep hearing you use, and that is a kind of word. So you can listen to that podcast coming out. But what is your message to young gay people, perhaps, of faith and their life and what they feel and who they are?
Well, they know who they are, and so that's why we've seen such a great fight, and actually some really strong Christians coming out of the LGBTQ community, because they have to do the work, and they know the Bible so well because they have to do this work to liberate themselves. But I would just say remain encouraged. If you're not in a safe space and you're not in a safe community, find a safe community, because they're out there. Get involved, and just know that you are beautifully and wonderfully made.
You said there's a cancer in the church. So tell me more about that. What does that look like to you?
It's a lot of different things. Nationalism, the way that women are treated, the lie about abortion, and really caring more for a fetus than actual born babies. We've got it backwards, and it has to do with a political movement and the church being used, I think, as pawns in that movement. And I saw it firsthand. I see it in my own family, and it's hard to see intelligent people who are trying to do what they feel is right in their heart not hit what I think is the gospel message of how we're really supposed to be treating people, loving thy neighbor, providing for the poor. You and I, when we were first talking, it was you that said there was a cancer in the church. And sorry, I've been using it since then.
Okay, good. Well, I'll take full credit for it.
Yeah, definitely. But how when you wanted to help the homeless community in your hometown and you felt that the church just didn't respond to it, and their response was, our job is to save people, and then it's up to them then to take it from there. And that's right. Backwards to me. So how do we undo all of these lies that have been built up for so long, and all of this ideology that just isn't working? Socialism, why is that such a bad word in our society? Why aren't we helping people in the right way? We can do better. I just think we can do better.
And why the movie you're doing, 1946, the movie, is so important is I've had that struggle in my life. Yes, I know there's something different than this religion I've always known, but the Bible, and I hear it all the time from Christians, the Bible is clear. So I love you're actually, like you say, the Bible better than you did before. You're taking the Bible and trying to say, guys, no, the Bible doesn't say what we've always thought it said that have bolstered these beliefs. I think that's a really important thing.
Thank you. It's definitely not clear. And one of the things that I realized reading it, revisiting it as an adult, all the contradictions, they're right in front of us, and it's just you can't say, don't kill and then have God go and slaughter all the women and the children. I just that doesn't make sense. Why would Yahweh do that? And so there's something else going on there. And we have to look at what these bigger meanings are. And we have to also not be afraid to have conversations around them. We can't have the church say, this is the interpretation and this is what we need to make sure that people know that this is what the Bible says. That's control. That's not faith. That's not mysticism. That's not a wonder of God. That is a doctrine that says, if you don't believe this way, then you're doing it wrong. So.
Yeah. What does it feel like to know? And this is one of the things I've always said. I love that the church, the evangelical church, is trying to adjust and say, hey, we want to be accepting of gay people to come in. But I know this in my own church, and I know individuals that we harmed by saying, yes, we're inviting to you. Come in, gay person. We welcome you. We love you. And I think we meant it with all our hearts. But maybe what even we didn't recognize, and we certainly didn't enunciate well to the people coming into our church, is there is a curtain behind which the gay person cannot go. I think you said it you can't lead a small group. You're never going to work in children's ministry. Absolutely not. And you're certainly not going to be on the, what's that?
Or be married by your pastor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can, yeah. I mean, that's a special thing for a lot of people, is for their pastor to officiate their wedding. That could never. So talk about that. What does that feel like? Because I feel like we think we're being accepting and loving, but we're actually really kind of setting people up, I think.
Oh, yeah. It's the worst thing you could do to somebody. It's like being lied to. So when I was in that church experience in LA and I was challenging them, saying, I can't lead this Bible study. And they're like, what do you mean? You don't know. Once I read the bylaws, which I wasn't supposed to get a copy of, I remember being in the parking lot of a grocery store, getting the email and sobbing. I had just been, my heart was broken. I had just gone through a breakup, the last thing you want to do is lie to people. So we have to be extremely careful and humble in this space. And I think we all can do better. So, yeah. Thank you for recognizing that, and apologizing and realizing the harm that those things, we all have done it, churches have done it. And again, like people like my parents, I believe they're victims of bad theology. They don't mean to hurt people in the way that they're doing. They really think that they're doing the right thing. So we need to softly introduce these ideas, let people look at this research, and then hopefully decide for themselves and make the right decision.
Yeah, we had a gay man coming to our church, the church that I planted in 2008. And he left, and I finally was able to catch up with him. And he said he was in the supermarket after church one day and saw some other parishioners from our church, and they were standing in line at the grocery store. And the couple says something about how horrible the gay agenda is in the country and how they're coming after our churches. And that was it. He was like, that's me they're talking about. And one of the things he told me was his friends had always told him, if you go to that church, you're going to get hurt. And he had told them, no, this is Paul's church. That's not going to happen. And he said, Paul, it did. I got hurt. Wow. I really got hurt. So, yeah, I think there just is some repentance that needs to take place, even in our most accepting of churches. And if I can tell one more story, even though you're the guest here, I know of a minister, and I had heard these stories that his son had come out and had been asking his dad to come, a pretty famous guy in our stream of Christendom, and had asked his dad to come minister in his affirming church. And his dad had said, no, I can't. But finally his son wore him down, and he went and ministered in this church and came away saying, I don't know, guys, it's this pretty much all gay church in the Bay Area of California. And I saw Holy Spirit move in that church. I saw the Spirit of God on people in the church. And he got great backlash and taken out of some prophetic places and things. And so I was able to connect with this guy later. And he basically said to me, yes, I'm ministering in affirming churches. I'm seeing God move. I just can't tell anybody about it because I'll lose everything.
Wow.
And so that's a little bit of where we are. And those are the types of things that really break my heart.
Well, I had one of our donors contact us today, and he's a Texan who is for him to be affirming is odd, I guess, right? And so he posted something on his Facebook about the movie, and he said that he's getting private messages from people. Thank you, but they won't post publicly. So they agree, but they can't post publicly. And he's like, so many people are coming. So at least they're still talking, but we have to get people not to be afraid to actually say, no, this is wrong. And it's okay to admit that we've been wrong. The church has been wrong. There's plenty of examples of when the church has been wrong and the church has had to apologize. The way that they've treated women during the witch trials, horrible. Can you even imagine being tortured like that? Segregation, slavery. Galileo died in jail because there were 5 clobber passages that told us how the sun moves around the earth. And it went his discovery. You know what I mean? Like, come on, guys. 5 clobber verses put him in jail where he died.
I had a person of color, an African-American friend of mine, tell me a few years ago that a lot of African Americans don't like the writings of Paul in the New Testament because his writings were used to propagate slavery in the United States. They obey your masters, obey those in authority. And gosh, I had never heard that before. But yes, we need to realize that even into the 80s, universities like Bob Jones University were prohibiting interracial dating because they said the Bible didn't allow it. So yeah, we've got it very wrong before, haven't we?
100%. I mean, that just doesn't feel like of Christ. Can you imagine Christ doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it, so.
Well, the whole point of him telling a story about the Good Samaritan and sitting with the Samaritan woman at the well, those were the marginalized people of the day. The Jews who were an oppressed people were the oppressors of the Samaritans. And Jesus made a point to say, today, I always say, today he wouldn't tell the parable of the Good Samaritan. He would tell the parable of the good Muslim, or the good abortion doctor, or the good
gay Christian.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, there's a comment on Facebook. I think this is a friend of yours. I think you and April connected recently.
I love it.
So good and so important. Love Rocky and what her team is doing.
Thank you.
It's funny because I met you and heard this whole idea of the 1946 sort of retranslation of the Bible to say homosexual. I'd never heard that before in my life, and I found that really fascinating and great to have that connection. One of the questions I asked you in our original discussion was, even if that's true, and I like that you're dealing with this, even if the Bible didn't say homosexuality before, the church has always been in opposition of homosexuality and gay marriage and all of those things. And so how do you deal with sort of that bigger overarching question of the church's history with homosexuality and gay marriage and such?
Sure. I mean, it just was misunderstood sexual orientation. And until the 1970s, gay people were thought to have a mental illness. It wasn't until 1973 that the American Psychiatric Association declassified homosexuals for being mentally ill. And so it's our understanding that needs to catch up, not the fact that being gay is wrong. And we can see throughout history, trans people existing. We can see them in the Bible. We can see queerness in the Bible. A good example is Joseph in the coat of many, his coat, the dress that he was wearing. It was literally a woman's dress. It's only used one other time in the Old Testament when a princess is wearing it. It's either Esther or it's one of the other princesses. But that garment is only used twice, when he's wearing it and this princess. So was he a cross-dresser? Was he effeminate? Was he a Malakoi? Was he gay? Was he being teased by his brothers because he was othered? And there are countless examples of marginalized people who don't fit those societal norms. And then we can see how they're treated as well. So yeah, we just have to pull those themes out. They're right in front of us.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. Thought about that. And I guess Jacob too would be.
Esau, 100%. He's home cooking with his mom. Yeah. And then my favorite one is the man, when Jesus says, you'll see the man carrying a jug of water right before he gets crucified. Men would never carry jugs of water. That was totally a woman's job. So who is this man doing woman's work? And why did Jesus pick him? Interesting, right?
Wow.
So, yeah.
These are
you just don't talk about them because the patriarchy doesn't afford it.
Yeah. Oh, that is really fascinating. I had never thought about that before. But yeah, Esau is the man's man. Of course, he would be the one to take over the headship of the family.
I love it. The hairy man. That's one of my favorite stories. And the father's like feeling him and he's like all hairy. Oh, it's so good. We really need to think about these things and really see ourselves in these stories. They're right there.
Well, and I think I think it's what Matthew 21, the passage about divorce and the one man, one woman passage, which of course is used as probably the primary.
It's Matthew 19, 1-6.
Matthew 19.
And then 7 through 9, Jesus says again, the one man, one woman, but then he goes in from 11 to 12 and he starts talking about eunuchs. And he says, fascinating. We know
that's a passage we never talk about in church.
Castrated men, but then he says, but some are made that way by man, some are born that way. So who are eunuchs that are born that way? Because they were castrated. Are they intersex people? Are they gay people? Are they celibate people? Who knows? But there's enough clues there to suggest that Jesus is saying something other.
Yeah. Yeah, and eunuch was not just a word used for castrated men, but also for effeminate men, which was, of course, looked down upon. And I don't think we dig into that passage enough for a whole lot of reasons, because I tell people all the time that Jesus is denigrating the Pharisees for their rule giving, and he's using divorce as an example. So when he says one man, one woman, he's not talking against homosexuality.
Correct.
He's saying, hey, this is your rule about marriage, yet 100%. You give yourself these exemptions, which is what you always do with the rules.
He does that in every challenge he gets from the Pharisees. He quotes scripture. He goes back, he goes, what's written. He's being sarcastic, and then he flips the switch. But nobody ever wants to talk about the flip switch. They only want to do see, that means Jesus stands with us. And it's like, come on, y'all. We can see right through your fragility and your fear. Like, honestly, that's how I feel with the trolls that come into their page. I actually have empathy for them because you can feel the fear and they're so angry. And it's like, hey, let's actually engage this. If you really care, if you really want to be Christ-like, you got to do better.
Yeah. And that's, again, why the work is so important, because I think people are afraid, like if that how I've always believed the Bible becomes unhinged and unhooked from me, then where does my morality come from? Where does my belief system come from? And so I think being able to say to people, no, you can look at the Bible differently. And I would say, look at the Bible rightly as compared to what we've been taught.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes all the difference, doesn't it?
Totally. And maybe a better word is appropriate, because we're trying not to be like, I'm right, you're wrong, but let's do this appropriately, or, I don't know, maybe there's a better word.
That's really good though, because I do try to, some of this stuff is arguable. We can have arguments about this because the Bible is translated from Aramaic to Greek to other languages, including English. Some of it is arguable. We could say, what does Jesus mean there? What does Paul mean there? And have those discussions, and we can really learn by doing that.
And we can grow together. We can actually, grow in our faith and grow in our walk and grow in our relationship with one another, instead of being like, well, I'm right and you're wrong, and so you're going to burn in hell. Like, what is that? I
want to tell the guys watching in the Facebook group, if you want to make a comment, ask a question of Roggio. She's our guest today on the Nonpartisan Evangelical. She's the director and producer of 1946, the movie, a movie that's going to deal with the passages about homosexuality in the Bible that are stumbling blocks for us sometimes in having this discussion. So if you make a comment, it'll pop up on our screen, and we'll let you ask Rocky a question to join in to the discussion. So yeah, I just think this is really fascinating. So talk a little bit, we did talk a little bit about in the podcast that we recorded, but what is the process for getting the funding you need and getting this movie produced and distributed?
Sure. So we're about halfway through our funding goal. We've gotten through most of principal photography, and now we need to get through post-production. We do have a GoFundMe up. You can find all of the links on our website, 1946themovie.com, or in any of our social media handles at 1946themovie. There's a GoFundMe. We have a fiscal sponsor link called Women Make Movies if people wanted to donate on a larger level. It's a full tax deduction. But, we still need to raise several $100,000 to get through the editing fees, the music fees, the color correction, the audio. We've got lawyer fees coming up, insurance fees. And then the last thing is producer fees. Like, we don't get paid until the movie goes somewhere. But our goal is to continue to fundraise, which we're doing well. And if we can hit our funding goal by the end of June, we can finish this movie by the end of August, which means we won't premiere though till 2022. We're going to submit to film festivals all through the fall, and then we'll premiere at a major film festival. And then once we know where we premiere, we'll be able to know more on distribution.
So did you have movie making experience before you got into this project?
100%. So I have been in the film industry for about 20 years. I'm primarily a production designer or property master. I deal with the art department, so anything physically handled or anything seen on camera. But I've also done a lot of production management. And so I know how to run a crew. I also know the importance of media and the power of media. And so once I learned of this mistranslation and the research and the letters of the translation team admitting that they made a mistake, and knowing my own story, as I was saying earlier, I felt it would have been irresponsible of me not to make this movie. And so far it's working. Now and I know we're making a beautiful film. We've seen some of the scenes. Our editor's been putting together scenes. We're getting great feedback. We're now putting together a huge animation segment. We're going to have about 10 minutes of animation, which is very expensive, but we think we've got it worked out with our animator and our illustrator to really bring us back to those times where we can see Pastor David in 1950, where he felt like he was the only gay person in the world. Can you imagine? There's no representation. He felt the call to ministry, but he also knew he was gay. And what do you do with that? So we want to bring people back into the 50s and have them feel those emotions. We also want to animate the Sodom and Gomorrah story and the Romans 1:26-27 story. So we can see these cisgendered married couples where the men are like, and even their women exchanged. And we can show that these are married couples going in and participating in temple prostitution and temple orgies and temple worship. What's going on there? So we want to recreate that. The Sodom and Gomorrah story gets so confused. And that's one of the, I think it's one of the easiest ones to debunk, but it's so ingrained in our society. And then the word sodomy and where did that come from? So we're going to look at that word. We're going to look at the root. We're going to know where it comes from and how it got put into our culture and how it's changed over time, so that people can start to understand these themes and put themselves there. And then again, have opposing theologians in the film. Like right now, I'd love to get Dr. Robert Gagnon. I'd love to get Dr. Michael Brown, and have them really tell us what they think and give them the fair representation as an expert that they deserve. And then let our audience decide once they have been presented with the information.
Mm. Yeah, I think Ezekiel, right, said that the sin of Sodom was hospitality, was a lack of caring for the poor and hospitality. Didn't Jude have a reference to Sodom? I seem to remember.
Yeah,
something.
Strange flesh reference, but still not about homosexuality.
Okay, and there's even argument whether Jude should be in there at all. I guess in some ways as well. Exactly. But the interesting thing is, Jesus never mentioned homosexuality. I always say, Jesus never alluded to this being an egregious sin that God cared about a lot. And in fact, his only reference, perhaps at all, was to say, hey, Capernaum, Sodom's going to have a better judgment day than you.
100%. Here's the thing. He's healing the blind and doing all of these other miracles. If it were really, if we could really be changed through Jesus Christ, don't you think that he would have healed a gay person?
Wow.
Taken an arsenokoitai and been like, I'm going to make you a heterosexual. Like, these weren't even words that they were using, like it was a non-issue to him.
Wow. And I've had people say, well, that, silence isn't agreement. But again, if abortion and gay marriage are the only two things God really cares about, as it seems most right-wing evangelical churches believe, wouldn't Jesus have mentioned either of them at least once? I don't know. I think it's a valid point.
Right. Yeah.
April has a question for you here. What are some good resources to direct people to who want to be affirming but struggle with the old way of fundamentalist thinking, interpretation of Scripture?
I would say the best place to start if you're just approaching this subject is Justin Lee. Torn is probably a good book to start with. It deals with these struggles. It also deals with a kid who was literally nicknamed God Boy. He talks about, he was teased in high school, and then all of a sudden he's like 16 going through puberty, and he's like, oh my goodness, what is this? He's same-sex attracted, and it was so confusing. So he really delves into, from a fundamentalist level, from a real Christian perspective, these issues in the church and being LGBTQ. Another good place to look is God and the Gay Christian, Matthew Vines. But if you're, one of my favorite books to recommend is called Included in Christ. It's by Dr. Christy Purdue. It's definitely linked on our website. And that book looks at it from a literalist point of view, from a young earth creationist, inerrancy point of view. And what she does is she walks through the one man, one woman doctrine and unravels it through Scripture and pulls out all of these themes that we kind of were mentioning a little bit to show you other passages to lead you to be like, oh, wait a minute, we got to look deeper into this. So those are the three that I would recommend: Torn by Justin Lee, God and the Gay Christian by Matthew Vines, and Christy Purdue, Included in Christ. But most importantly, though, don't forget to check out Kathy Boldock's book. Her book is called Repairing the Breach. It's called Repairing the Breach. Oh, it's Walking the Bridgeless Canyon, Repairing the Breach Between the LGBTQ Community and the Christian Church. So she goes into all of these details as well. Those are my top 4.
Wow. Good resources. Thanks, April, for that question.
Yeah,
I was listening to a podcast yesterday from a podcast that I really love called Theology in the Raw with a guy named Preston
Sprinkle.
Yeah, and he's doing some risky stuff in dealing with homosexuality, but he was talking about hormone blockers, for puberty blockers for kids and things, and had an oncologist on it. It was a fascinating podcast, and I would recommend people would listen to it. But I do find there is still this idea in Christianity that you're gay because your dad didn't love you, or you're gay because you're angry about something, that it is a psychological response to something rather than an innately created way of being. And I can see your face. What is your
all of that?
What is your response when you hear that?
I mean, that's just complete nonsense. And actually, Justin Lee talks about that in his book Torn, because he went to those conventions. He went to ex-gay conventions, and he's like, this isn't working. And all of these people are sleeping with each other. Like, all of the people who are on the stage who are trying to say, I'm an ex-gay, they're all going back to the hotel rooms and having sex with each other. And so anyway, but that's a whole nother story. But it just doesn't work. It's been proven that it doesn't work. So we need to introduce the themes that actually do work and stop with, these lies based off of fear and misunderstanding.
I mean, are there people that decide to be gay and they can decide later not to be?
Sure. I would say that there are probably some people who might experiment, or maybe they're not LGBTQ. They might have had a traumatic experience that may have led them to something, but it's very rare. People who are naturally born LGBTQ, they know it at a very early age. And there are a lot of beautiful examples of people who have not fallen under abuse. And Justin Lee and Matthew Vines are two people that fall into that category. They were raised in the right homes. They were raised by loving Christian families. They weren't having sex, and then when they discovered they were same-sex attracted, they definitely weren't having sex, like they struggled with these things, but they weren't put in an abusive situation. And they didn't grow up like I did through purity culture and the AIDS epidemic and hearing all of the negative things. It was different. Now we're focusing more on trans issues and things like that, but they didn't have the trauma that maybe I suffered, but they still had the same-sex attraction. So we know that these things are not true.
And I hear that from so many of my gay friends now. They're just like, Paul, I never made it. I just knew, but I tried to ignore it, but I just knew.
Yeah, I knew at 5 years old. I knew something was different. I remember playing with my sisters and the assistant pastor's son. His name is Ryan. And they had basically, this family had a boy for every age for our girls. And so I'm like, I guess I'm just going to have to marry Ryan, because who else am I going to marry? I'm just like, this is gross, So later on, I realized that it was because I was same-sex attracted.
And I think it is. And even talking about the Preston Sprinkle podcast, I think many people are in good-hearted ways trying to stretch themselves, but still we see this as some deficiency of creation. I'm sorry you ended up gay. Let's find an explanation so we can get you out of it.
Right.
And I think that mentality has got to change.
I agree. So we're secretly hoping that Preston becomes affirming. We think he's on the fence, so we'll see. I've asked him a couple times to be in the movie, and literally just this week he said no again. He's too busy. But is he, or does he not want to be in the movie? I don't know. But I do really respect his work, and I do really respect him as a person trying to, at least, he's my favorite in the arena, at least in the way that he handles the issue. So I do appreciate that.
And I think he really is trying to challenge some things. If anybody doesn't know who Preston Sprinkle is, he wrote a book with Francis Chan and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but
I forget the name of that one too. Yeah,
it was to refute Rob Bell's Love Wins, and actually Preston has a wonderful 2-part series on his podcast about theology of hell, and that he has changed his theology of hell.
Oh, really? Listen to that.
Yeah.
Does he believe in hell or no?
He's moved from being a believer in an eternal damnation hell to your soul will be destroyed. You will cease to exist as a soul.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah, and many people don't know, and he does such a great job of laying out, hey, there are 3 theologies of hell in the Bible that we can believe and still be Christian and be in and he does a great job of explaining it. And some of it I had never heard before, without being, without going fully universalist, like everybody's going to end up in the same place kind of thing. So I appreciate what he's doing, but yeah, just if I can encourage people listening, that mentality of somehow being gay is a second-class citizenship, and a second-class citizenship in the church. I think just like we've been working on with women, which we're still not quite there, and working on with divorced people. And, it's not a second-class status. It's just another way of being human. And I think if we can get to that mentality, we can treat people a whole lot more like God would treat them.
100%.
Is there anything else you want me to know about the movie or about what you're doing? Anything we haven't hit upon?
Well, I mean, I'm probably having the most fun I've ever had in my life. It's been exciting to meet people like yourself and hear your story. I shared your story recently with one of our producers, and just like those notes that we were talking about how the church can do better and really caring for the things that we're supposed to be caring about. And so I really appreciate your walk and your voice in this, and just in this arena in general of actually trying to do better in the world. And then from there, I'm excited to see where this movie goes, turn it into an impact piece where, once the movie is done, I'm not done this work. We want to go and we want to tour around. We want to meet people. We want to continue to meet people. We do community Zooms. Please find us on social media. I try to at least once a month open up a Zoom where people can come and talk to us one-on-one. And, so there are plenty of ways to get involved. So I encourage you to please get involved.
And do you attend a church now, and a church that has walls, and do you go to it now?
So I used to go to a church in California before I moved to Philadelphia. I moved to the East Coast to be closer to my parents, to do post-production in New York, and to save money because I couldn't afford LA anymore as I'm trying to make this movie. But I visit a lot of different churches on Sunday. I sometimes tune into my dad's church still every Sunday, which is good and bad. But I'm listening. And then I've actually met some new pastors on the TikTok that I've been Zooming in on and listening to their services. So it's been nice to be able to be a floater and meet new people and be welcomed. But I don't have a home church at this moment.
Yeah, if anybody missed, Rocky's dad is in the movie as sort of the kind dissenter to the premise of the film. How is that relationship now for you guys?
It's good. We're doing the best that we can. I'm actually really proud of my family. I went home for Mother's Day, and my dad had mentioned something about this whole birthing parent thing that the government said. And he said at dinner, he goes, and now I guess men can have babies, as the government says. And my mother said, Sal, that's not what they said. And she corrected him, and he corrected himself. And then he started gendering people properly. And then they started talking about Caitlyn Jenner. I couldn't believe it. I've got my two nephews there, my sister who's married to the other pastor at the church, my pastor father, my mother, and they're talking about trans athletes. And my dad's like, well, we should, if they can't compete in the women's sports, maybe we should make room for them somehow. He's making room for trans athletes. Wow. I couldn't believe it. I just never in a million years thought that we would ever have that conversation at the dinner table, let alone them actually being respectful. So it's even working in my own family. Like, people are doing better. So hopefully it'll trickle out into the society. We can see a ripple effect, and people can have that experience at their dinner tables. Like, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Wonderfully shocked.
I'm wondering the impact Caitlyn Jenner is going to have on sort of Republican, right-wing leaning Christians. If anybody, I think everybody probably knows Caitlyn Jenner was formerly known as Bruce Jenner and was a decathlete Olympic gold medal in 1976. Now, a transgender woman who has transitioned to living as female and is planning to run for governor of California as a Republican.
I know.
And,
I know.
So it'll be interesting to see how Christians deal with her as a candidate.
Interesting. So we'll see. I don't know, but I'm not going to touch that one. The lesson there was mom and dad are doing better at being respectful. And so good on you, mom and dad. I'm very proud of you.
Well, and I used Caitlyn in my novel that I wrote as, if Caitlyn Jenner showed up at your church, are you going to force her to use the men's restroom? And wouldn't Caitlyn wearing a dress or a women's outfit be more awkward to force her to go into the male restroom than to allow her to use, which I would assume she would prefer using the female restroom?
Yeah.
So we just get crazy and hypocritical on these silly
Totally.
issues, don't we?
And the biggest thing too is like the whole idea that they're predators, which is just so false. It's such a false narrative. Like it's just got to stop. And so again, we can all do better. And hopefully this movie will help with those conversations and understanding. So
that's good. Yeah. I don't mean to take us on big side roads there, but yes, most sexual predators are men.
yeah.
And so your young men,
yeah,
heterosexual men. And so your boys are in much more danger going into the men's restroom
yeah.
than if a transgender person was using their appropriate gender bathroom. So, let's just not be crazy. Well, tell everybody where they can find you on social media. And again, if you want to plug how they can help you out, I would be glad to let you do that.
We are at 1946 The Movie across all social media platforms. The email is 1946themovie.com. On all the sites, there are links to our GoFundMe where you can help us finish this movie. If we don't finish, it's time or money. So we want to finish this year. We're trying to raise the money to finish this year. We also have a fiscal sponsor, Women Make Movies, if you want to donate on a larger level, or you can buy merch. We've got a merch link. So 20% help us finish the film. And in June, we're going to be doing a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. So if you want to be on the team, you'd be like, I can raise $500, and we want to get as many people as possible to be committed to raise $500 in their community. And I bet you we can raise this money in a month, and then we can finish this movie. So that campaign we're launching in June. So stay tuned for that. If you want to be involved, send me an email, 1946themovieinfo@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for giving me so much time to talk about it with our folks here today. And it's a real joy meeting you. And I hope, however I can support you, for sure, let me know. But hopefully we can stay connected and as you keep walking this thing through.
100%. I can't wait to meet you in person. And again, I'm so excited for the work that you're doing. And I can't wait to see where all of this goes. So thank you for having me.
Well, okay. And all my patrons, I'm glad you guys got a chance to meet Rocky. And the full podcast will be coming out here in a couple of weeks, and we'll let you know when that's coming down the pike. So hope everybody's having a great day, and we'll talk with all of you again soon. So.